Hey everybody, Grumbles here with another DCS video, and this time I got something special. Bullet Job's Gazelle helicopter was released in early access on Friday, so I can finally bring you some footage of a light helicopter in DCS. Also, since the Gazelle early access is only for the 2.0 alpha, we are on that version this time, as well as the new Nevada map, which also looks nice and has a lot of fun playgrounds for helicopters. Well, let me give you a quick overview of this new helicopter and its capabilities before we look at the mission in it to show off what it can do. I just installed Gazelle and the 2.0 version yesterday night, and I'm quite positively surprised by the little Gazelle, which says something considering I was already excited about getting a light helicopter to play with. I think I mentioned that quite frequently in my other DCS heli videos. Now, the AS-342 Gazelle is a light utility helicopter developed in France and entered service initially in the early 70s. Now, the M version we have currently in game of the Gazelle is the armed version and used as a light anti-tank helicopter, armed with 4 Hot 3 wire-guided anti-tank missiles and in service since the 90s, so it's a little bit newer. It looks great and is a very interesting and fun addition to DCS, as it is the first lightweight helicopter in the game. Until now, the lightest helicopter in DCS was a UH-1H Huey, which to me already felt quite agile, and I love flying it because of that. The Gazelle, even in the M version, which adds a little bit of military equipment, has less than half the gross weight of the Huey though. The Gazelle has of course also a smaller and weaker engine, with about 870 horsepower maximum output for the 342M, compared to the 1400 on the UH-1H, but with the difference in weight, the Gazelle's power-to-weight ratio is still higher than that of the Huey, even fully loaded. Though a bit of that extra power is used for the Gazelle's fan-tail anti-torque rotor, which has a higher power requirement than the standard tail rotor. Now, this significantly lighter weight, but decent power-to-weight ratio makes the Gazelle a very agile flying machine and tons of fun to fly. That is why I and many others were looking forward so much to a light helicopter, and the Gazelle does not disappoint. On the contrary, I have even more fun with it than I thought I would have, and I'm still new to flying it. Obviously, it just came out. I can't wait to see what one can do with this little hummingbird with some more training. Now, speaking of training, the heli's maneuverability does come at a little bit of a price. As you have probably heard by now, if you follow the development of the Gazelle module, the helicopter is not the easiest to get into. As a matter of fact, purely from the flying part, it is probably one of the most challenging modules. Especially hovering and maneuvering at slow speeds are not easy in the Gazelle, and need some training to get really proficient in. Training I not yet have, since the module is brand new and I only have a few hours in the helicopter. As a result, you may notice, for example, that I often go for a bit of a skidding landing, putting those skids to use. That the heli is a handful isn't surprising though, with aircraft agility and stability are generally mutually exclusive. You rarely get both, at least not without modern fly-by-wire systems. When looking into helicopter flight and learning to fly a helicopter, hovering is often described as trying to balance a basketball on top of a long pole, and from all the DCS helicopters so far, I would say that the Gazelle fits this description the most. I have to say though, it is very fittingly named Gazelle. Just like a gazelle, it is fast and agile, it wants to move, and it really does not like to sit still. You need some training and develop a feel for the machine in order to make it sit still. And that is very much in line of what I expect hovering in such a helicopter would be. And that is what makes flying and learning it really rewarding in my opinion, and once you get a bit of a feel for it, you can already do some really nice flying with it, I would say. There are also a few things like autopilots and the Nadir navigation system that can make your life a lot easier if used right. I might go over that a little bit more in a future video. Now, while the little Gazelle can be a challenge for new players when it comes to the flying part, the opposite is the case with the system management and so on. Being a lighter and simpler helicopter, the startup procedure for example is simple and fast, about what you see on the Huey too, so that's easy to learn and to remember. Now let's talk quickly about the helicopter's weapon systems. The AS-342M is, as mentioned, a light anti-tank variant of this helicopter, and it can carry 4 Hot 3 anti-tank missiles. Other versions of the helicopter are planned to be added later with, for example, the ability to carry 20mm gun pods or rocket pods. The anti-tank version we currently have is also equipped with a large sighting system on the roof called APX397 Vivian, which is quite a powerful observation tool for such a small helicopter. It can rotate in all directions and has a powerful camera as well as an infrared sensor. It also has a laser for ranging, but only for ranging. It can't be used to designate targets. With the sighting system on the roof, you can keep almost the entire helicopter hidden behind a hill or a building while searching for targets. Now, with this system, the Gazelle is also a great scout, as it has a very large zoom. The sighting system is of course operated by the co-pilot, and multi-crew functionality for that is planned to be added later, so hopefully we can fly the helicopter with multi-crew in the future. Now, on top of scouting, this sighting system is also used to fire the HOT-3 anti-tank missiles, which are wire-guided via a Cyclos system. They will hit wherever the gunner aims at and have a range of about 4,200 meters before they run out of wire. I will talk a little bit more about them when you take a look at their use in a mission. And speaking of one, now we have talked about the Gazelle a little bit, let's take a look at a short mission in it and see what it can do. Now, here's the scenario. It's pretty simple. In our little fictional war, we are tasked to destroy an enemy armored force that has taken up defenses around the abandoned town of Cactus Springs. Our own ground forces available for this task are limited, however. We have 2 platoons of 4 M2 Bradleys, so a total of 8 Bradleys, which are not very well armored. Our Gazelle call sign Wolverine World 1 is the only air support available, and we are tasked to weaken the enemy defenses enough to allow our Bradleys to successfully attack the enemy units and destroy them, taking over Cactus Springs. Our Gazelle has only 4 ATGMs, of course. However, we are also able to call in artillery support from a battery of M109 Paladin artillery pieces and act as artillery spotter for them with our sighting system to further weaken the enemy positions. Now, Nevada is pretty flat for the most part, not perfect for a helicopter like the Gazelle that wants to stay hidden, but there are some hills to the north of Cactus Springs which will serve us as cover. We will fly towards the waypoint 1 north of the hills, and then make our way through the hills towards Cactus Springs, staying hidden from sight till we reach a good position within weapons range of the town, and then using the hills as cover to engage the forces there. Simple enough, let's get going. I have loaded the first waypoint into the nadir navigation system of the Gazelle. That is a Doppler navigation system that uses radar as well as some other sensors to determine the helicopter's movement and therefore its position. Not that I really need it in this case, as the destination is close by and easy enough to find. I have also already activated the helicopter sighting system as well as weapons, since it needs a short time for the sighting system to warm up, and I want it to be ready when I'm in range of the target, so I can engage targets there right away. Now, after takeoff I fly northeast a little bit till I'm northwest of Cactus Springs, with the hills I intend to use as cover between me and the little town, so that I can approach within weapons range of it without being seen, and then change course southeast towards the little town, staying low over the hills to avoid detection. Now, the Gazelle is equipped with a radar-running receiver, which is useful to spot radar-guided threats. It does not, however, have a laser-running system like the K-50, which runs from being ranged by a laser, like from a main battle tank, for example. Something to keep in mind, because if a modern tank spots you, it will try to shoot you down when you get too close to it. Now, we have reached a good position within weapons range of the target, about 3 to 4 kilometers northwest of it. From here I plan to look at the target area at Cactus Springs and find out what threats are located there, and then engage the most dangerous ones. Doing that, I want my helicopter to stay hidden as much as possible by the terrain to avoid being spotted by the enemy units around the town, with only enough of my helicopter looking over the hill to see the town and fire at it. Now I pick a suitable hill and approach the reverse slope, and then slowly ascend in order to pop up over the ridge. Doing so hovering straight up requires a lot of power though, and therefore creates a lot of torque, and I have to have the anti-torque almost maxed to counter it while ascending. Luckily the helicopter has auto-hover function, which I can engage once we are in position. So I don't have to hold the helicopter in position in a hover myself, which would get very tiresome pretty fast. Now, in order to activate the auto-hover function, you have to fly pretty slow, less than 18 kph, and you can't descend or ascend a lot, otherwise the auto-hover won't engage. Something that also needs a little bit of practice, since, as already mentioned, the Gazelle really doesn't like to sit still very much. Using the nadir navigation system and autopilot functions properly make this a lot easier though, but in this video I don't use those options since I did not have the chance to fully read the manual before playing the mission and was not aware of all the functionality of the helicopter's navigation systems at this point. But in any case, we have reached our fire position hidden behind the hill, and the helicopter is in auto hover, and I can start to look for targets from the gunner's position. We just barely clear the ridge, enough to see over it, but hopefully very hard to spot from the down. I get the safety covers off from the lacing button as well as the fire button, so I'm ready to fire a missile, and change the sight from a fixed into steerable mode. With the helicopter in auto hover, I can use the joystick on the gunner's seat to move the sight and have a look around. The sight also has a very high zoom, as you can see, and there are quite a few enemy armored units around Cactus Springs. With only 480 GMs, I have to prioritize what I want to destroy. Now, scanning the area, I saw some T-55 tanks, some BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicles, APCs and infantry. But for my helicopter, the biggest threat at this point is a SA-9 Gaskin, a BRDM armored car with a quad IR SAM launcher on the roof, and we are well within range of that, so I decide to dedicate my first missile to this target. First though, I scan the area a bit more to make sure that this Gaskin is the only AAU unit I can see in the area, and that no enemy unit has its turret pointed at me and is looking like it has spotted me. Those BMP-1s also have wire-guided anti-tank missiles. Those are older ones, but they will happily fire them at the hovering helicopter if they spot one and are within range. But so far nothing is pointing its weapons at me. Now I switch quickly to the infrared mode on my sighting system in case I have missed something with the normal camera that shows up better with the IR mode, but I can't see anything new that I haven't already seen in the normal camera. So the SA-9 launcher is still the first priority, and I get the crosshair of my sighting on this little but on close range quite dangerous AA unit and get ready to fire my first Hot 3 anti-tank missile. Now in order to do so, the helicopter needs to point at the target, so I slave the helicopter's autopilot to the side. This works similar like it does on the Ka-50, and now the helicopter won't just auto hover but also turn the nose towards where you're pointing with the sight. So the missiles always point on target. Now I quickly lace the target to get the range to it and make sure I am close enough to fire. The missile's wire is only 4.2 km long, so that is the maximum range. But the target is close enough, and I also engage the master arm, which I forgot to do earlier, to get the missile armed, and now a small white box appears in the sight in the down right quadrant of the sight, which is indicating that I have launch authorization. The hot launchers are mounted at a bit of an angle on the helicopter, so they will fire slightly up, which helps to clear obstacles in front of the helicopter, like the hill we are hiding behind. And the first missile is on its way, and I can immediately see that the SA-9 was a good first target, because he has spotted our launch and its missile launcher is extending and getting ready to fire. But since we picked it as a first target, we can take the SA-9 out before it can get its missiles ready. I take a quick look around to see if any other turrets turn my way, but it seems the SA-9 was the only one that has seen us, or the others are not within range. Now we have 3 missiles left, and I select the second one on the selector below the sight. With only 3 shots we have to prioritize what to take out. Now both the T-55s and the BMP-1s are a threat to our Bradleys, the APCs are not. Now the BMP-1s can take a Bradley out with their cannon or their anti-tank missiles, with the missiles even at larger range than the T-55s can. On the other hand, the Bradleys can take out both T-55s and BMPs with their own tow missiles, but they have only 2 per launcher before they have to be reloaded externally, which takes a while, and without those the Bradleys only have a 25mm cannon, which is not good enough for a T-55, but it is good enough for a BMP. That's why I picked the T-55s as a priority target, since the Bradleys can take out the BMPs even if they're out of missiles with their cannons. I fired at the one closest to me first, and now I aim for the 2 T-55s in front of the town, which are directly in the path of the Bradleys at once. Now a word on the Hot 3 missiles, and how they function while we take those 2 out. The Hot 3 is guided via a so-called SACLOS system, or Semi-Automatic Command Line of Sight. This means that the targeting system will steer the missile in such a way that it automatically stays in the center of the gunner's crosshair and hits what the gunner is aiming at. All he has to do is keep the crosshair pointed at the target and the system will guide the missile there. That is an advancement over the older and similar manual command to line of sight system, which were used for example in older TOW models. With those, the gunner had to control the missile himself via a joystick and fly it into the target, kind of like a remote-controlled airplane, which was a lot more difficult than just pointing the sight on it. Now, as mentioned, those are wire-guided missiles. The first such missile in DCS on an aircraft, player-controlled at least. The missile is connected to the helicopter via a wire. That has some advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantages, I guess, are pretty obvious. The missile's range is limited by the length of the wire, and if the wire is cut, the missile won't hit. On the plus side though, this means that the missile can be very resilient to jamming, and it can be cheaper and simpler because the missile itself needs neither a seeker head nor any kind of guidance computer. It gets all the information from the helicopter via the wire. That way you also have more space for explosives inside the missile. And the system is passive, so there isn't, for example, a laser that could be detected. The Gazelle does have a laser to range the target, but it is not needed to use the weapon. Now we destroyed the two T-55s in front of the town and we are fresh out of ordnance. But that does not mean we are not dangerous anymore, because now we go over to the second part of our mission, playing artillery spotter for our M109 battery. Now, as first target, I figure I pick the APCs with infantry close by. The APCs themselves, with their machine guns, are not much of a threat to the Bradleys, but the infantry is equipped with RPGs, so I want to take them out. And I figure I drop a few 155mm rounds on them. Now, in order to do so, I just take my helicopter's own coordinates, which I can get from the Nadir navigation system, and combine them with the heading to the target from the compass and the range to it from the laser rangefinder to get the coordinates of the target on the map. Now, the range from the laser is of course slant range, and if you would be on significantly higher altitude than the target, we would have to take that into account with some simple trigonometry. But in this case the altitude difference is so small, when I did the math it turned out that the difference is almost nothing in this case. Also in this case we actually have our own position on the F10 map, because I don't know how to set it up in such a way that I can command my units like the artillery and Bradleys without having friendly units on the map. But normally you would get your own position from the Nadir system. Now, with the coordinates of the target determined by our own coordinates combined with the heading and range to the target, we can set up our first fire mission, and after 2 minutes setting up or so, the Paladins go to work. And the M109s start to fire a few salvos on the target, and I observe the results from my position. Now, the APCs themselves have not taken a hit, but this attack was about the infantry, which possibly has RPGs, and they are taken out quickly. Now, with the BTR-80 APCs not being a very big threat, I shift the fire of the M109s to a group of PMP-1s, which are a bigger threat than the PTR-80s. By now I have also ordered the Bradleys to start to advance, since I figured I have done enough damage by now to soften the enemy defenses up enough to allow the Bradleys to take over the town. I let the M109s keep firing on the BMP's position, hoping that they will eventually hit them and take them out, and then I start to make my way back to the FOB to rearm, as I can't do much more from here for now. And since I was fairly sure at this point that the enemy positions are weakened enough for the Bradleys to handle them, I figured that this would be it for this mission. However, when I arrived back at the FOB and started to shut down my helicopter, I noticed that one of the two Bradley platoons was taken out and the other one was still too far away to attack. They did not attack at the same time like I had intended. Things were not going as planned, and with half my Bradleys destroyed, I figured I better take off again after rearming and make sure that my remaining troops can take over Cactus Springs. So after getting 4 more Hot 3 missiles from the FOB, I made my way back towards Cactus Springs, this time flying to the position of my remaining Bradley platoon to engage targets from here. I put my Gazelle into an autohover next to the Bradleys, and then I start to scan for targets that can still threaten my 4 remaining Bradleys from this position. Now, when I do so, I can spot one right away, a BMP, and when I try to engage the enemy BMP though, I notice that I am too far away. the enemy units are over 5 kilometers away from this position, out of range of my Hot 3 missiles with their maximum range of 4200 meters, so I decide to fly north again, back towards the hills, close to my original position, and use them as cover again to get closer to Cactus Springs. Doing so, I cross open ground pretty close to the enemy units. However, since I know I have taken out the only AA unit in the town, and there are not that many enemy units left anyway, I am not that worried about that at the moment, which turns out to be a mistake. Now again, I set up behind the reverse slope of a little hill when I reach my new observation point, and slowly start to ascend behind it till I can look over the crest towards the town and put the chopper into an auto hover. And when that is done, I hop back over to the gunner seat and start to look for the BMP-1 I saw earlier and I want to take out. Now, once I start looking for it, I find it pretty quickly, but as soon as I see this BMP, I also see some smoke coming from it. At first I think the artillery hit the BMP and it is on fire. Before I realize that what I'm actually seeing is the smoke trail from the BMP's 83 Sega anti-tank missile, which is coming straight at me. Seems it wasn't such a good idea to cross the open ground in front of the town to get to this position. The BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicle saw me and fired a missile at me as soon as I poked my head out from behind cover. Luckily I can duck back down behind cover in the last second, and I start to change my position to pop up from another position a bit further behind. Now the BMP-1 has a single launch rail for a 83 Sega anti-tank missile, also a wire-guided anti-tank missile like my HOT, but much older, over the barrel, so after firing it, it has to be reloaded from the outside, which takes a while, so I figure I better pop back up as soon as possible and take the BMP out before he gets this thing reloaded. So having quickly changed position and reached a new firing position, I start to ascend and slowly pop up over the ridgeline to get line of sight of the target area again. Now the stabilized sight luckily still points more or less at the target area, so once I get over the ridgeline I can get the crosshair on it pretty quickly. I just have to be careful while climbing not to gain much speed in any direction, so that I can engage the auto hover as soon as I got line of sight on the target. Especially in a more stressful situation, it can easily happen that you drift too fast in one direction or another and the auto hover won't engage. Now I am in position and getting ready to fire. The turret of the BMP-1 is still pointing my way, but I assume the reload of the missile will take a little bit longer and I am out of effective range of his gun. Once I got my auto turn to target on and my helicopter turns on the target, I get launch authorization and I fire my missile. But in the exact same moment, the BMP-1 gets his 83 reloaded and also fires, so I also got the missile coming at me as well. Luckily the older 83 is much slower than my Hot 3 and I hit the target first and the enemy missile loses track after the launch vehicle is taken out. Well, that was my first wire-guided missile duel in DCS, at least while flying an aircraft. Now, with this BMP taken out, I look around if another one is aiming at me. There is one more BMP-1 a bit further behind, but he is not aiming his turret at me. He either has not seen me yet, or he is out of range, since the 83's range is not that high. In any case, I fire my next HOT at this one after selecting the second rail. And that BMP is also quickly taken care of. Now, with those two BMPs taken out, there really is not a whole lot more left alive around this town. There is one more APC which I also finish off with another HOT missile, and then I can't spot any more targets after that, so I send the Bradleys in to take over the town. And with all enemy units destroyed by now, I follow the Bradleys in to keep an eye on them and take a closer look at our objective. There is an enemy artillery unit behind the town the Bradleys shoot up, but other than that, all resistance is taken out and the town is ours, so this mission is a success. So that's it for this first Gazelle mission. I hope I could show off some of the capabilities of this little helicopter. I personally enjoy the Gazelle a lot, and I certainly will do more with it in the future. Some might be worried that with having a limited weapon load of only 4 missiles, it might not be that interesting, but I think that's not a problem. Helicopters like the Gazelle or the Bo 105, which are also under development by Polychop, were designed to operate close to a FOB where they can reload and refuel, so if such a small FOB is part of the mission, I don't see a problem there. And on top of that, the helicopter can also be used as a scout, forward air controller or artillery observer, in addition to its role as light anti-tank helicopter, and is just tons of fun to fly in my opinion. So far I'm really happy with this module, and I can't wait for this to get multi-crew as well, so you can fly with a friend as a gunner. Well, and this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.